So this is a 3D printed stamp handle with a fully customized laser engraved design attached to the bottom, and in this video we're going to show you exactly how we made it. Like most of the projects we're working on in the Ideas Center, we first need to start with a 3D model. There are a number of programs out there which will enable you to design in 3D to create a model like this. But in this particular situation, we're going to be using Onshape. In this video, we're going to assume you've already created an account. So here we have our original document. This is the stamp that you saw earlier. This is a completed design with a customized handle, but in this video, we're just going to show you how to create a basic version of this. And here I'm pointing out that the important dimensions we're looking for are to make the stamp roughly 1 inch by 1 inch, and the stamp itself should be about 0.82 inches, I think is what we saw there. So we're going to start by creating a new part studio first, naming it whatever we want, and then we're going to get right into creating our initial sketch. In any CAD program where you're designing in 3D, you're going to start with a 2D profile and use a number of features, is what they're called, to extrude, subtract, make holes, different shapes. And so to start off, we're going to make a square, and we're centering the square right on the origin. And then from there, we're going to use a constraint, an equal constraint in this case, to make both sides equal so that we get a square. And now we're going to finally dimension the shape. So 1 inch is what we're shooting for, and that's good to start with. So now we have our basic shape, and we're going to extrude this to create a 3D object. So now that we have our 3D object, what we're going to want to do is hide all of the construction planes that we needed to start. And now we're going to design the cutout for the stamp on the bottom of the handle. We're going to do that by drawing another square, and we're going to use our constraints again to center that square on the body of the handle. So right now the center point is constrained, but not the edges themselves. So we're going to add that equal constraint again so that now we have a square. And then we're going to offset and dimension those edges in by that much, or maybe a little more. And then we're going to offset that. And we could have used that to start with, but I wanted to show you constraining that rectangle. We're going to offset that in a little bit. That way the stamp, we can make sure it's going to fit and it's not going to be too tight around it. From here, we're going to not add, but subtract material away from the body. So you'll notice right now it's set to add, but because the body is going inside the existing shape, we're not changing the geometry. So if we swap that to remove like we just did, now we have our subtracted feature, our little pocket for the stamp. So here I'm re-showing the sketch, that way I can select that inner square, and I'm going to extrude it up to the original face to represent the stamp. And it was a little fast right there, but you might be able to see that that was a new body. That's why it's a different color, because it's a separate shape from the rest of the handle. And now I'm adding a little bit more thickness to match what I measured the stamp material to be. And it's going to stick out a little bit more now, and that looks good. So now we're free to add our chamfers around the sides to make it look a little nicer. These are by no means necessary, but they look really cool, so we're going to do them. Change the size a little bit, and there you go. That's about it. I'm going to add some more to the bottom. Great, and so basically we're done, and everything after this point is going to be extra. So what I'm doing right now is trying to quickly add a couple shapes that intersect through the body of the handle. And as you can see on the left, I'm running out of time. I've got a minute left on my recording, so I'm going to try to rush through this, and it's going to go pretty fast, but I wanted to show you anyway. So I created an extrude through the other face, and now I'm trying to do one through this face, and they're going to intersect in the middle, so it's like 4 legs that are left like a table on top of the handle. And you'll see that in a minute as I remove this body through the handle. And there you go. So now the last thing we have to do to get the part from our CAD program to the 3D printer is export it as an STL file. So here we're doing that. You right click on your part and then you hit export and choose STL, and then you get a file like that. Now we're opening up Prusa Slicer, which is the slicer for our 3D printers, loading the file up. And the first thing I'm going to do is flatten it on the other face, just like that. And I'm going to choose my layer height. I'm going to say keep the settings, change the infill, and then hit slice. Everything looks good, and I'm just going to go through the layers really quick. That all looks good. There's going to be some trouble with some supports, but that's okay. I don't care a whole lot about the detail on this part. So I'm going to go ahead and export that with this button there. Save it. And then I'm going to eject the drive. Now, while we have that printing, what we're going to want to do is measure the size of our stamp in CAD, and then we're going to take that number, 0.82 inches, and use that to create a scale stencil for our design. And I'm going to draw this actually by hand. So what I'm doing here is just setting the calipers to 0.82 inches. And now through a series of steps using my ruler and my pencil and the calipers as well to get those exact measurements, we're going to draw that square at scale at 0.82 inches on the piece of paper, and then we're going to make our design on top of that. And now that the stencil is done, we can actually get into designing our stamp. We're just going to do this in a black marker. That way we can get a good high contrast photo and turn that into a vector later on. Now with our drawing finished, we're going to move on to vectorizing the image. So first we're going to take a photo, try to get the shadows out of the way. After that, we're going to move on to the editing process, and it's nice, you can do this all on your phone. So first thing we're going to do is crop the image into a square, because that's the shape of our stamp. That looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is actually mess with the settings and try to get as high a contrast of a photo as possible. So we're going to go through all the different settings and try to get the brightest whites and the darkest blacks and the crispest lines in between. Once we're happy with the results, we're going to go ahead and upload that photo to our Google Photos, or you can email that to yourself or do whatever you want, but you got to get it on the computer. And then we're going to download that onto our laptop. Now what we're going to do is open up Figma, our 2D graphic design program. And what we're going to do is create a new document. Now inside this document, we're going to upload our photo, and we're going to start out with an image. Then we're going to go to our plugins, and we're going to use the image tracer. But to get there, if you don't already have the plugin, you're going to want to go to plugins right there and search up image tracer, and then it should just pop up, and then you hit run and you'll have that plugin for any document you use now or in the future. Now we can run it. The red lines show roughly what the trace is going to be, and as I drag this away, we'll be able to see that on the right we have our initial image, which is made of pixels, and on the left we have our vector, which is perfect smooth lines. Now from this point we can get set up on the laser cutter. So we're going to open up the computer, and the first thing we want to do is open up Figma and Onshape. That way we can extract the files from both programs and load them onto our laser cutting software. So starting with Onshape, what we're going to do once you have your document open is right click the face you want to export. Export as DXF. Name it something. You don't have to mess with any of the other settings, and hit export. Now we're going to go into Figma and get our design by exporting as an SVG, which is a vector file. And then from there, we can open up Lightburn, which is our laser controlling software, and import those designs. So go File, Import, and then we're going to choose both of those files at the same time. Now they're in there. The small square in the center is what we exported from Onshape, and that is the correct size. The larger design is not sized correctly, so what we're going to have to do from this point on is resize just the design so that it fits roughly around that square shape. Now, the last step in this process is going to be setting the inside design as an engraving. We're going to do that by changing the color of those lines to red with the selection on the bottom. Now you'll see that the red is set to fill, which makes it an engraving. Black is set to line, which makes it a cutting path. And one little last thing is that we made a box around our design, which is going to invert it, just like you can see on the screen right there. And that is going to set us up to run this. Now with all the pieces completed, the only thing left for us to do is to glue them together. So we don't have an ink pad in this clip, so we're just rubbing on a Expo marker to get the ink on there. And here's the result. So we hope this video will give you a really good starting point to pursue this project, but we understand that we move pretty fast and don't necessarily cover every detail. So please, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us through our email, which I'll attach in the description. But that's all for now.